The Los Angeles Dodgers have the second highest payroll of any team in the MLB in 2026. But what they're not telling you is how much more they pay after deferred payments and taxes and fines are calculated. And after you see for yourself, you may just be calling for a salary cap after 2026.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, the show where we talk nothing but the D-backs Monday through Friday. And thank you so much for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I'm your host, Danon Biggs. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I know that I started this episode by saying the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is not a Los Angeles Dodgers podcast, in case you were confused. This is a Diamondbacks podcast. However, I am going to talk about something that has been on my mind for quite a long time now, years, in fact, and is probably on your mind too. If you're a Diamondbacks fan, and if you're a Dodgers fan watching this, is probably something you've heard a lot and probably have a lot of reasons why we shouldn't do this, and that is the salary cap. We're going to talk about that today. This is not going to be a 100% extensive look into things. This is just going to be kind of my findings over all of this and just kind of my thoughts on everything as we go. But we're going to talk about what the Dodgers spent in 2025, because it's not what is reported exactly. At least what's reported isn't the entirety of what the Dodgers spent. And we're going to then use that, look at that, and compare it to the rest of the majors and see kind of where that stands amongst everybody. And then we're going to talk about some solutions and some things that can be done to appease everybody and to make baseball a bit more engaging. Because here's the facts. Well, here's the thing about baseball is that baseball, it's not like with football or with basketball even, where you'll have people all over the country, all over the world even, and they'll have their teams that they love and they follow, and they're not necessarily like the big ticket teams. I mean, obviously there are bigger market teams out there, but there's less teams and there's less games, and it feels like it's a bit more of a they follow the players almost more than they follow the teams. And at least that's been the case in my experience. But with baseball, it's so much more of a local sport that I think that just even, and you see this with even places that don't have a major league team but do have a minor league team or a college team, is those college teams and those minor league teams, they get tons of local support, because baseball is just the kind of sport that you want to support, you want to be there for, and you feel a lot of pride towards your team, towards your baseball team. And so the baseball has always excelled when it leans into that local market, that local, the local rivalries and the local feeling that really only baseball can have. And so when MLB, you start seeing this big divide between the heavy spenders and the low spenders, then I think that's a really big problem. Now, what a lot of people will say, and if you're a Dodgers fan watching this, you're probably already thinking, well, if they want, that's not the people who are spending a lot shouldn't be punished because they're making an investment. It's a business, which it is. You're absolutely right. And if you're going to put more money into your business, you can expect a bigger return. And that's what's happened with the Dodgers and a lot of these other teams. But it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just saying, well, if the Dodgers put, if the Diamondbacks would just put more money into their payroll, then they would have more success and they would make more money. Well, not exactly. It's not as simple as that. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. But let's first look at what the Dodgers actually spent in 2025. Now, all these numbers are estimates. I must stress. So, but I think they're fairly accurate estimates. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. So in 2025, the highest spender was not actually the Dodgers at all. They were second, so they were close, but it was the New York Mets who spent $323 million on payroll, which you would be quick to point out, and you would be correct to point out, they didn't even make the playoffs. So this whole talk of a salary cap is kind of pointless, right? Well, no, not exactly, because we do still have the Dodgers up here. They're 321. They're very, they're 2 million behind, but this isn't the full story. This doesn't paint the full picture because the Dodgers do this really funny thing called deferred payments. And if you look at the amount that they've deferred, these are all the players that they owe money to. And if you guys are just listening to this, I'll kind of describe it for you. But there's a list of 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 players. Oh, there's a number right there. It says the total at the top. I didn't have to count. There are 14 players that the Dodgers owe money to that they did not give them the year that they played. And I believe I wrote this down. Let me see if I can find it. At least 7 of those are from played this year. So let's look at this. Over the last 5 years, the Dodgers have accrued $1.039 billion, $1,039,000,000 over the last 5 years. That's how much debt they've piled on over the last 5 years that they owe to players. Now, you might think, well, all teams do this, right? Yeah, it's true. Most teams do, to some extent, have deferred contracts. Let's look at that, shall we? The next most is the Nationals with 12, because if you guys remember, they signed a lot of guys to win their World Series. Pretty much none of those guys are still on the team. The Giants, they have 3. The Red Sox, they have 8. And 2 of those are Rafael Devers, who is no longer on the team. A bunch of other people that aren't on the team. The Marlins, they have 2. Diamondbacks, they have 4. Only one of them is still on the team, which I believe Ketel Marte should be on here. So I don't know how totally accurate this is, but Spot Track is a good website for this kind of stuff. So I could, maybe that's out of date. Maybe that's no longer the case. But 1, maybe 2 players on the Diamondbacks have deferred payments, of which, again, an estimate, we're maybe saving $5 million a year per player by doing deferred payments. Remember that, $5 million per year. Okay. Or 10 million for 2, if that's the case. I don't know. Again, a lot of this is kind of wishy-washy, kind of up in the air, but no other team really has that much. The Mets have a ton, but all but 2 of them are from players that are no longer on the team, and so on and so forth. There really aren't that many. The Dodgers have far and away the most with 14 total, and like half of those or 8 of those are players that are currently on the team. So what I did is I looked. The next highest over the last 5 years of teams that have accrued deferred payments are the Mets and the Red Sox, each accruing about 50 million. So over $1 billion from the Dodgers in the last 5 years. The next most is about 50 million. Don't forget, million is 1,000th of $1 billion. That's a huge margin. So let's look at this. Shohei Ohtani, right? He gets this massive contract, $700 million for 10 years. That's $70 million on average, $70 million a year. That's almost, it's not exactly, but that's almost what, no, I'm sorry, that is more than the Marlins paid their entire team. The Marlins had a payroll of 67 million, and Shohei Ohtani is getting paid more than 70 for a year. But which again, if I think he deserves it. I think he's an incredible player and he draws a crowd. He makes so much money for himself and for the team, and I think that's a very fair price. Don't get me wrong. But the Dodgers only paid him $2 million. They're only paying him $2 million a year. That's it. $68 million every year is pushed to later. So the Dodgers are saving $68 million on Shohei Ohtani because of deferred payments. And that's not all. They're saving $13 million a year from deferred payments for Blake Snell, almost $10 million for Mookie Betts, almost $10 million for Freddie Freeman, $5 million for Will Smith, $5 million for Tommy Edman, $5.25 million for Tanner Scott. In 2025, the Dodgers saved $115 million in deferred payments. They got $115 million worth of players for free. Let's look back at that payroll list. 115, that's the Brewers. That's the Reds. So two teams that fought hard, made the playoffs. The Brewers, best record in baseball. That 115 million, that is more than the bottom 8, 9 teams total. Well, that was my notes. Sorry, you guys saw a little glance at that. And that's not what they paid. That's what they didn't pay. And they just said, we'll pay that later. That's crazy. That's so much. I can't even fathom what that is. And the thing is, that's frustrating, is that when it does come time to pay these guys this $1 billion worth of money, they can pay it kind of however they want. Like if they just want to give Ohtani stocks, work out a new deal, they can, at least right now. Hopefully that changes, but as of now, they may not have to pay that at all. They can get around. I mean, they can get creative. Again, it's business. Like they can business their way out of that. And Ohtani will still get what he deserves, and Betts will still get what he deserves, and they should. They're really, I mean, as far as I can tell, they're great people. They're very good athletes. I'm not harping on them by any means, but is that fair? I don't know. Well, let's keep looking because that's not it. There's still more. Okay, so let's now stop and look according to Spot Track, which again is fairly well, I think, fairly well received. It's not perfect. Even it says these aren't completely accurate. These are just estimates, but they're fairly accurate estimates. It says, well, when a team pays, this isn't what it says. MLB says if you pay more than a certain amount, you are going to have to pay a luxury tax. Basically, you're penalized for putting too much money into your payroll. And that's to kind of equal the playing field a little bit. And then that money will then go to player benefits. It goes to kind of redistribution to the other teams who didn't exceed the the payroll threshold. Just like little, it's kind of distributed a little bit. And this year, in 2025, 8 teams surpassed that threshold, which was $241 million. The Diamondbacks, with the most that they've ever spent in franchise history, hit $211 million, according to Spot Track. So $211 million the Diamondbacks spent. They were about $30 million underneath. The Dodgers, and I should say, this payroll that they include, it does include, it's not what you paid your players, it's what your players were worth. So at the very least, this factors in the deferred payments. So they're not saying, oh yeah, Shohei Ohtani is just worth $2 million. They're like, no, he's worth $70 million. You can pay him whatever you want, but you got a $70 million player. That's adding to your payroll as far as we're concerned. So at the very least, we got that going. So if you include the deferred payments in there, we're looking at a payroll for the Dodgers. Remember, their payroll, according to like what they actually spent, is reportedly 321 million, and that put them at second. 321, but after the deferred payments are calculated, that goes up to 416.8. Nearly, that is very just shy of $200 million more than what they actually spent. So they got $416 million worth of players. The Mets, who had the highest payroll, are nearly $100 million under that at 341. Like, it's not the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, well, everybody does that. It's like, well, yeah, they kind of do, but not this. So way above and beyond. And then we're like, okay, well, then they must have a very sizable luxury tax, right? Yes, they do. The problem, I guess, again, this is all business. I understand, and it's good business. The Dodgers, I will say, I hate the Dodgers guts, the team, not the players, not the fans or anything. The team. I hate the Dodgers, but business-wise, phenomenal business. Business, very good. But you have teams here like the Padres. They spent over 30 million above the limit. The Blue Jays spent about almost 40 million above. They paid each about $10 million in fees, in tax, the luxury tax, 10 million. The Dodgers spent $168 million in just the luxury tax. The second was the Mets, who paid half that at 85 million. So the Dodgers paid double what the next highest team paid. And this is all calculated based on like, okay, well, how far are you over? How many years in a row have you been over? And you're penalized for the longer you do it, the more you're penalized. So the Dodgers, $168.8 million just in the luxury tax. One more time, 168 million. That puts them between the Orioles and the Giants of payroll. So just the luxury tax would put them at the 15th highest payroll in MLB, which means that more than half of the league has a lower payroll than the Dodgers luxury tax. And the Dodgers are happy to pay it. They don't care because they have money. They have the money. They're like, sure. Again, they saved $200 million in deferred payments. So they're still like, sure, whatever. They're like, yeah, give us the tax bill. We don't care. We're still going to add to our payroll. It's almost like a badge of honor at this point because they can take it. They're a big market team and they can take it. And that's fine for them. And it's fine for business and all that kind of stuff. But I did all the math. The Dodgers didn't spend $321 million this year. Or that's not what they were working with, I should say, after deferred payments, after the luxury tax, after signing bonuses, because again, they give 50 million, 65 million signing bonuses to their big superstars when they sign them. And that doesn't get included into the luxury tax equation. Over the last 5 years, they've accumulated $295 million in signing bonuses in the last 5 years. So I went ahead and was just like, well, let's just take the mean of that. Let's just divide that by 5. Let's throw that in. The Dodgers are working with approximately $650 million in 2025. In 2025, they had the money. They got this. They got $650 million worth of players to play for them in 2025 alone. And they will have $650 million in 2026 and 2027. That's how much they're working with. The Diamondbacks had 211. The Marlins, 85. Like, It's so, and now we're going to talk about this in the next segment. This has gone way longer than it was supposed to. Is there is a place for like a salary floor. And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. I have to go to commercial break or else I'm going to absolutely lose it and whatever. So let's go to that real quick. I'll be right back. We'll cool off and then we'll talk about the rest of the major league teams and where they all fit into this. So stay right there. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially if your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when, excuse me, I'm allergic to not making a lot of money. Excuse me. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I was really flustered apparently because I did not do that ad read very well, but you get the idea. Anyway, unless you skipped the ad read, then I did perfect. Anyway, so the rest of the MLB, we kind of have to, we want to look at that. One thing that has been floating around a lot lately is this chart, and you may have seen it, but it's floated around on Facebook a good deal. And I screenshotted it because I knew I was going to want to talk about this. But if you look at the 2024 payroll of a team versus the 2024 revenue, how much that team made versus the payroll of the following year, it has a lot of really interesting things here. The number one payroll to revenue team was the Mets. They made $444 million in 2024. And their 2025 payroll, according to this graph, which I'm just going to take this graph at face value, because I'm sure all of these are estimates, but their payroll was 400 million after tax and everything like that. So they ended up converting 90% of their revenue back into payroll. So the higher this percent is, the more they're spending what they have, is kind of the idea. So a team on the lower end makes so much and then only puts a little bit back in, a small percentage back into their payroll, that's a bad sign. The lowest, which is kind of unsurprising, the Marlins made $317 million in 2024 and only put in $86 million into payroll. That's 27%. So the top is 90, the bottom is 27. So where does everybody else fall? Well, the Dodgers made $752 million in 2024. They made the most money out of any team in the majors in 2024. Not a big surprise. And they put in 550 million roughly into payroll, which was 73% of their revenue. Now, I see that as the Mets kind of taking a really big swing, which they did. We know they did with Soto and everything. So, and Soto, the other thing, not deferred. He's getting it all up front. So, that's a big one right there. Up next is the Blue Jays, who have 71%, 71.5% they put back into their payroll. The Phillies are next at 67%, and fifth are the Arizona Diamondbacks, putting 2/3 of their revenue back into payroll. So the Diamondbacks are they're doing it too. They're putting a lot in. They're also the only one in the top 5, top 6 who are not paying the luxury tax, which is interesting. But the thing is, and here's like, I kind of wanted, when thinking about this over the weekend, I kind of wanted to really try and be like, you know what? I think the Dodgers have a point. I think the Dodgers fans and the people who don't want a salary cap, they want to see things going. I think they may have a point. But the more I kind of dig into this, the more I see that there are high earning teams and then there are low earning teams. And obviously you sign Shohei Ohtani, you're going to make more money. I mean, that's a given. That's going to happen. And so you sign big names, you're going to make money off of those big names. The thing is there's always a risk. What if Shohei Ohtani showed up in LA and stunk? What if his 2023 was kind of a fluke year and he was building and he was doing better? 2023 was this crazy, outrageous year. And then 2024, he stunk. And then 2025 got worse and then just kept getting injured. And it just ended up being a bad deal. Did the Dodgers lose $700 million? Yeah. But the Dodgers can lose $700 million and they can still pay everybody else and they can still do well and they're fine. And they can do deferred payments for the next 20 years because they know, well, we're still going to be around. We're the Dodgers. That'd be like if the Yankees were afraid that in 20 years they were going to go out of business or be maybe the New York Yankees are going to be a low market team in 10 years. Obviously not. So they know they can do that kind of stuff. The Diamondbacks can't do that kind of stuff because they don't know what financial situation they're going to be in 10 years. Until this last year, they didn't even know if they were going to be in Arizona in 10 years from now. And that's where the Marlins are at. That's where the White Sox are at. That's where the Rockies are at. I mean, there's certain things they know are going to be there and won't be there, but they don't know if they're going to be financially stable enough to sign someone for $700 million and give them a $100 million signing bonus. There's no way they could do something like that. It's just not feasible. And so you're looking at that. And again, I know the Dodgers made, and this is incredible. Business wise, this actually is very incredible and impressive. The Dodgers signed Ohtani to a $700 million deal in 2024. Since then, they've profited an additional $700 million than they did before, meaning that in 1 year, Shohei Ohtani made up his whole contract for the Dodgers. So the Dodgers, they're raking it in, and they deserve to from a business standpoint because, yeah, it was smart. Because of Ohtani, because of that signing, they were able to get licensing deals in Japan. Tons of money flowing in. These guys, they're doing a very, very good job business-wise. But the question is it because they were in a position beforehand to do so that other teams just aren't and never will be? The Dodgers have been around for longer than most of your grandparents have been alive, if not all of them. And the Diamondbacks weren't even around when I was born. And I'm not that old. I'm a young guy. If you're just listening to this, imagine a really young, handsome man. That's what this is. And if you're watching, don't tell them. But the Diamondbacks don't have generations and generations of fans, and a lot of teams don't. And if they have been around for a really long time, it's not like, the Nationals were in Canada 20 years ago. They haven't been in in DC forever. And when there was a team in DC, they left because they weren't doing very well. And like it just, and I don't want to penalize the Dodgers for playing smart business and for being, in an area and a place for as long as they have been. But that is all just stuff that we have to keep in mind. Now, is the answer a salary cap? I don't know. Let's talk about that in another segment right after this, because we have another break that we have to take. And then I have something that kind of shocked me, like genuinely shocked me, that I'm going to share after the break. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. In doing research for this segment, or for this episode, was reading stuff about salary caps and deferred payments and all these kinds of things. And I came across a quote from Rob Manfred, who is the commissioner of MLB. It's talking about deferred payments. And this shocked me. I had never heard of this. As a lifelong Diamondbacks fan, I hadn't heard of this. So there's a chance you haven't either. But if you have, let me know. I'd actually be curious to see if maybe this is just a blind spot of mine, and most people know. But here's the quote. Historically, this is Rob Manfred. Historically, we did have one franchise, Arizona, that got itself into financial difficulties as a result of excessive deferrals. We've strengthened our rules in terms of the funding of deferred compensation in order to avoid that kind of problem. But look, obviously the bigger the numbers get, the bigger the concern. He's talking about deferred payments, and he's referring to the early 2000s Diamondbacks. I'm like, the Diamondbacks had a problem with deferred payments? What's going on? So here's what happened. Jerry Colangelo, who is the founder essentially of the Diamondbacks, the main reason we have the Diamondbacks, started the team, and in 1998 he wanted to compete, but they didn't have money because they just started. And so they started signing a lot of big names so that they could compete. But because they didn't have money, they relied on deferred payments. And they did this for a bit. And what they found was that, they started getting better. In 1999, they won the division, but their ticket sales were going down. Like the first year, it was great, but then it started to dip a little bit. And then 2000 started to dip even more. And so what does Colangelo do? Well, he doubled down and he kept signing people. And because of this doubling down, he won a World Series in 2001. I mean, all the guys that we had, that lineup. And if you look back at that lineup, you guys, that was a killer lineup. And honestly, it's not a huge surprise that this was the case. In 2001, the Diamondbacks won with an $85 million team. $85 million in payroll. Now, there's adjustments for inflation and all that kind of stuff. But again, as a reminder, like $100 million is next to nothing. Like that's like the bottom five. So back then, that was probably more middle of the road. However, in that $85 million team, Colangelo had accrued $250 million in deferred compensation to 18 different players, including Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling, Matt Williams, Luis Gonzalez, and all the guys you know and love. In 2004, Colangelo was outed and bought out, and new management took over and new ownership. And a big reason for that was this large list of deferred payments that needed to be made. So from 1998 all the way to 2011, mostly, but even until today, the Diamondbacks had to deal with that. And so if you look at their history, you see, and this honestly answered a lot of questions for me. You have 1999 division win, 2001 division win, World Series, 2002 division win, best team in baseball, 2003, 2004, one of the worst teams in baseball, 2005, 2006, 2007 won the division, 2008, 2009, 2000. 10. 2011 won a division. 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17 won a division. And it's just, or sorry, wild card. It just that we kind of, yeah, it was like we were the best team in baseball, and then all of a sudden we went for 10 years, 20 years of just every once in a while making a division win, a playoff appearance. And it's because of this. I mean, Jerry Colangelo, I mean, he wanted to win a World Series, and he did. And he really, I mean, if it wasn't for that, I'm certain the Diamondbacks wouldn't have the fan base that they have today to the extent that they have. But the years following, the Diamondbacks really had to pay for that. And interestingly, and I was looking at that list of the deferred payments by team, and on the Diamondbacks, we have Corbin Burns, we have Zach Greinke, who we're still making payments to, Madison Bumgarner, who unfortunately we're still making payments to, and then somebody named Bernard Gilkey. I'm like, who the heck is that outfielder? I had no idea who he was. I looked him up, and it didn't even list the Diamondbacks as one of his teams because it was the AI thing, which is not accurate all the time, as we've talked about on the show. But he did play in Arizona in 2000. And to this day, we are still paying him approximately $1 million a year. So like we're still feeling the effects from that period. So why did that happen? Well, the answer is because the Diamondbacks are not the Dodgers. They're not the Yankees. They're not the Mets or the Cubs. They're not this huge market team who can afford to take a gamble like that. And the thing is the Diamondbacks took a gamble and they won. They won the gamble. They got exactly what they wanted. But then they had to pay the price. The Dodgers, they don't even have to win the gamble, and they're going to be fine. So the Diamondbacks stand as a testament and a warning to all other teams why they cannot play like the Dodgers do. And honestly, I think the Nationals, they're feeling that because they have to this day, right now, they have 12 players on deferred compensation. So they won their World Series, but how have they been since, So I think the Diamondbacks and the Nationals are good examples of why something needs to change. Because if teams like the Dodgers can just continue to make deferred payments for 10, 20 years out, and they can pay their guys $2 million a year now, and money's just not a problem because they're a big market team, they're going to make their money. The Yankees are going to make their money. It's not a matter of, well, did they win the World Series? Did the Yankees not embarrass themselves in the playoffs this year? No, they did embarrass themselves in the playoffs this year. Well, they're still the richest team in baseball. They're always going to be making that money, whereas teams like the Diamondbacks and the Marlins and the Reds and the even more established teams like the Padres or the Giants, like they just don't. They never will be able to do that. The Astros are maybe the closest thing to like a small market team that had a bunch of success and is now kind of up there, but they're not really. They're kind of just barely up there. And so something needs to be done to manage that difference in very rich teams and not very rich teams. So what's my proposal? I don't think a salary cap is necessary because also I think teams are going to find a way around that. It's like trying to tax the rich, The rich are going to figure out ways to not get taxed. The Dodgers, I think, are going to continue to pay and get big names and all that kind of stuff. Let's just let that keep happening. What we need to do, though, I think we need to ban deferred payments. That needs to be a thing of the past. It's been a problem, as we've seen, and now it's a problem because only the rich teams can play that game. Nobody else really can without selling their soul, So deferred payments need to be out the door because also in 2035, who knows what they're going to be doing with Shohei Ohtani and his money. They're going to work something out so that they're not, losing out on everything. I don't think there needs to be a salary cap. I do think there needs to be a salary floor, though. And they need to figure out, it needs to be like the median percentage of what this and that. I'm thinking something like 100 million or something like that. It doesn't need to be crazy high, but it does need to be something that says, hey, you need to be paying at least this much. Honestly, actually, what would probably be better is you need to be paying X amount of your revenue up to a certain point. So it might be like once your revenue percentage reaches 100 or 150 or whatever, then you can leave it at that. But until then, you have to pay 50% or whatever of your incoming revenue towards your payroll. And then from there, the only other thing I can think of that doesn't involve a salary cap, because the thing is, owners are going to want a salary cap. Players, that's a hard line for them. They will not budge on that. The only way we could maybe get a salary cap is if the entirety of the 2027 season gets canceled. And I don't want that. I don't even want it to be delayed. So for me, I'm kind of thinking, don't try a salary cap, but let's try a salary floor. Let's ban deferred payments. Say if you want your player, you have to pay them this year. And if you can't afford them, don't sign them. And then and I think we need to do something about revenue sharing of some kind to fix that discrepancy between high market and low market, because it's insane. And if you use the argument like, well, the Dodgers only won the World Series twice in the last 10 years, and well, the Brewers were the best team in baseball and they have a low payroll and all that kind of stuff. The thing is anybody can make it to the postseason. Anybody can have a good run. Anybody can make it to the World Series. Anybody can win the World Series. But to make the playoffs as consistently as a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees or even the Mets have, and who haven't had a losing season in 20 years or whatever it is, that only comes from consistent signing big names, big people, talent who can get you there. And occasionally you'll get somebody, you'll get a team who has a handful of players that have developed and done really well. And then the very next year, they're going to get signed by some other team because they're free agents now, and the Dodgers or the Yankees are going to take them. And that's just how it goes every time. So something absolutely needs to happen. I want to do a follow-up on this because I want to hear what you guys think. I imagine there's a lot of people who are not Diamondbacks fans watching this. I don't know if you're still here, but let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll address those in a future episode, probably later this week. But be sure to follow us on X and Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Diamondbacks. We're on YouTube as well as every other place you get your podcasts. If you want to see more of me, you can find more of my YouTube channels and projects at my website, slackshack.tv. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB game night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Go Blue Jays. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow.